Hi everybody, it's Mr. Gray here. Thank you again for a really great week of school. I hope you guys had a great little break last week for the Thanksgiving holiday. We only have a couple more weeks of school before winter break, and so I wanted to kind of map that out a little bit for you and tell you what's going on. But let me tell you first, next week is a normal week. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, we get out at 2:10. Wednesday, we get out at 1:40. And then the following week, December 13th through the 17th, it's a normal week except for Friday. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday is 2:10. Wednesday and Friday are minimum days, and the kids get out at 1:40 both of those days. That's kind of the next 2 weeks. That's what's going on. We're going to have like a normal academic week next week, and then it's going to kind of slow down a little bit the week after. We'll do some extra little projects and things that last week before winter break to kind of close things up at the end of 2021. Next week, though, in Reader's Workshop, we're going to kind of get a little bit ready for what we're going to do when we come back in January. When we come back in January, the kids are going to have little book clubs. So they'll be with a few other students reading a fiction book, and they'll all be reading the same book, like the same length over the same time. And so we're going to practice what that means. You have to stop at a certain place and be able to discuss your book. And we're really going to be focusing on characters and how to study and analyze characters. And we're going to do that for a few weeks after we come back in January. But this week we're getting ready for that. We're just kind of talking about different things about characters. So we're looking at how's the character feeling, what evidence do I have, like what words from the text tell me that a character is feeling that way, because sometimes it's their actions, sometimes it's what they say. It's not always that the author is telling you they feel a certain way. So we'll be looking at that. We'll be looking at how you can empathize with characters, like if you put yourself in their shoes, how would you feel? And then we'll be trying to, like I said, find the evidence in the actual text, and we'll be keeping track. The kids have readers' notebooks, and we'll look at ways we can write on a Post-it, like the character was feeling this because, and we'll keep track that way as we go. So that'll be fun for a couple weeks, and they'll be reading fiction books. We'll be able to check out fiction books from the library. It's about 20 to 30 minutes of reading every night should continue, even through the holiday, even through the break, to keep reading and keep that stamina going throughout the year. In Writer's Workshop, we're working on our third information book, and this one is really different. The first two, just like all the writing we've done this year, has been published by hand, and this one is one we're going to publish on Google Docs. And so there's two things happening at the same time. They're writing their information book and trying to use all that they know so far about their information books and how they're organized, what text features and text structures they have, and what we've been learning about writing information books. And we're also going to be learning how to write those in Google Docs. So already as we've begun, that's a big challenge to get the right spacing and to remember to capitalize things and to put stuff in the center and then stuff on the left. And then to add text features and how to add pictures. All those are, even if they're not new, they're not smooth, they're not easy. And so we're working on both of those at the same time, like I said, and that'll go all through next week. And then into the last week before winter break. The plan, assuming everything goes correctly, is that during that last week, we're going to host an information fair. And so that's an opportunity for the kids to share out their information books and what they know as an expert of information. And so we're looking at how to do that. We might host it outside or in the NPR. We might invite other classes where the kids can come, and as kids are walking around, the students from our class can explain, I wrote about basketball, and here are all the things I know about basketball. I wrote about cursive, and here are the things I know about cursive. I wrote about how to fix a pencil, and here are all the things that you have to do to fix a pencil. And so that should be something really fun. That is depending on getting through everything the next week, but that would be the plan. That's something really fun that we could do, and I'll update what the plan is next week with that. In math, we are kind of wrapping up the unit we're doing. Next week, we're going to have a test. And so on Wednesday, the kids will take this assessment about what we've been working on. On Tuesday, we'll have a study guide. And what we're going to practice is doing this study guide and then kind of sending it home, and the kids will have to kind of study it, look at it at night before the test. And that's not something that's like required for that time, but we're going to talk about thinking about, in 2022, the kids are going to be fourth graders. And so we going to have more tests and a little more work. So this is just a great practice on that step to think about, I know I have a test on Wednesday, so I need to kind of look at what do I need to study to get ready for that? So that'll be a little short activity that they can do on Tuesday, but we'll talk about that in class and we'll make a plan. On the test are a few things. We're continuing to study and practice multiplication. We've been doing multiplication facts for quite a long time, and we're still, I'm still meeting with students and going over those, and we're still talking about those. But over the last couple weeks, we've been using those multiplication facts for some actual multiplication purposes. And so we've been studying multiplication tables. We've been studying how to find the missing number. So you can imagine it's a little bit like algebra, where it'll have like a question mark times 8 equals 16. And so you have to know your multiplication facts to be able to know that it's 2 that's missing, or to use a multiplication table. And so we've been talking about using both of those for that. Another thing we've been talking about is the distributive property. And so essentially that's splitting up a multiplication equation or expression into 2 parts. So you can imagine there's 8 times 5. And instead of thinking about it as 8 times 5, I'm going to think about it as 5 times 5 and 3 times 5. And I'm going to actually split it. I'm going to make an array and split it into those groups. And I can rewrite the equation. And there's 2 reasons we're doing that. First, we're studying multiplication properties. And so we're thinking about how I can manipulate expressions of multiplication. So like the commutative property, I know that 5 times 4 is the same as 4 times 5. And so it's not that there's a specific use case for that, they have to know, but knowing that is helpful as you continue, that I can switch the order if things are easier, or there's another reason I want to do it. And so the commutative property really applies to the distributive property, because I can split things up any way I want, and I can still multiply them. And so, for instance, the reason we are doing that distributive property, it's not really helpful to split up 8 times 5, but it is helpful to split up later this year 12 times 7 into 10 times 7 and 2 times 7, because those are much easier to add. And then maybe even later, 18 times 6, because that's not on the multiplication facts, even up to 12, as 10 times 6 and 8 times 6, and add those together. And that is getting us ready for 4th grade, where we start to add multiply 3-digit numbers times 2-digit numbers. So I'm going to take 325 times 20, and I'm going to split it into 300 times 20, 300 times 5, and 20 times 20, 20 times 5, things like that. So we're getting ready for some higher level multiplication and thinking about how splitting it will be easier if I do it that way. The other thing that's going to be on the quiz is, on the test, is multiplying single digit numbers by multiples of 10. So going through 7 times 10, 8 times 10 was pretty easy. All the kids really kind of figured out the pattern. I add a 0 to the end. 8 times 10 is really 8 tens, which is 80. But now we kind of stepped that up a little bit, and we said, okay, can you do 7 times 30? And so we talked about breaking that apart. There's different strategies we use, but you can imagine one of them is to make that 30 10 times 3. So it's not really 30 times 7, it's 10 times 3 times 7. And so that makes it the multiplication facts that we know. 7 times 3 is 21, and I know that when I multiply something by 10, I can just add a 0 at the end, because it's 21 tens. And so all of those different things, there'll be some work to do on the test, and those will be on the study guide. We've been working on those in class, but they're different ways of using the multiplication facts in real, more real situations, more tangible situations. And so continuing to practice multiplication facts at home is really important. That's going to just continue and continue and continue all this year. We want the kids to be really fluent in all the multiplication facts up to 100, and even continuing on into times 11 and times 12. And so I'm still checking, I'm meeting with kids and checking off on their little progress charts that I sent home to you, and that'll continue and into division facts back in 2022. So that's the deal with math. In history, we're still looking about how California has changed over time. This week and into next week, we're talking about how the land has changed, and we'll also talk about the cultural history of California and what that looks like. No science next week, and probably the week after. We'll kind of wrapping that up and getting ready for January. And so that's what's going on in our class. As always, if you have any questions or anything, let me know, but I appreciate all the support. We'll get through these last couple weeks before we're going to break. All right, you guys. Bye-bye.